Hello there, my name is Linda Jo Martin, the Book Lady, and today is my weekly book review. Today I am reviewing a memoir of a woman who grew up in Idaho in the 1920s. Her name is Ruth Butler, and this is her first memoir. It is Echoes from the Hills of Idaho, Stories of My Early Life by Ruth Butler. There is at least one sequel, there might be two. I know she was working on a third one last I heard. So this one covers her early childhood when she was living in a remote countrified location on the western side of the Grand Teton Mountains in Idaho, actually. And I'm going to insert a little Google map right about here to show you where she lived. I have it in my mind to take a trip through southern Idaho later this year, and one of the places I want to stop at is the location where she grew up, just because it's a literary hotspot as far as I'm concerned. I read her memoir and I thought it was rather entertaining and informative about life in the 1920s. So I enjoy reading memoirs like this once in a while. I mean, it isn't the greatest literary extravaganza ever, but it is interesting to learn about how people lived in the 1920s and how she remembers the events and locale of her childhood. So I thought I'd read just a short passage from this so you can get an idea of her writing style. Every 4th of July we had a big picnic at Warm River with friends and relatives. There were watermelons cooling in the river while women cooked the fish the men had caught. The men were busy turning the handle on the ice cream freezer. Kids shot off firecrackers and cap guns, and the hill across the river echoed with the sounds of people celebrating 4th of July. After dark, there were more spectacular fireworks. They shot up high in the sky and rained down in bright colors. We screamed with delight as each rocket filled the night with colored sparkles. Papa brought the ice to make ice cream. It was from a big bank of drifted snow on which Papa had piled thick layers of straw. The straw kept the snow from melting, and it turned into ice. The snowbank provided ice all summer for our icebox. Have to think about that. If people are living off the grid in a snow area, they can do the same thing to have snow turn into ice and keep it all summer long. That's fascinating. Papa always knew how to make do with what he had. Electricity did not extend out as far as our place in those days, and so we lived in a time zone that dated far back into the pioneer days when everything had to be done the hard way. Still, I wonder if life wasn't appreciated more and family fun was more entertaining than what we have nowadays. It seems to me people don't enjoy their beautiful homes as much as we did that ramshackle old farmhouse, and they go outside the home in search of entertainment. Their garages are so full of things they buy. They have to park their cars in the driveway and on the street. Our neighbors didn't live next door, but we knew them for miles around and enjoyed good times and friendships with them in our homes. Now we have the most recent gadgets to cook with, but often eat out. There is usually a waiting line, so it is crowded. I watch people eating. I can't tell if they are enjoying the food and the other person's company from the way they look. I seldom see them talking or laughing. There is no expression, but only a kind of glum, isolated stare, as though their thoughts focus entirely on themselves. I wonder, has the home become just a place to sleep and to store all the junk we buy? Good questions. So, she was raised in the country on the western side of the Grand Teton Mountains in Idaho, and I would really like to visit her homestead if I can find it. I think I have located it on the map. Other things I'm planning to do in southern Idaho include visiting Shelley, Idaho, where I spent 2 weeks when I was 11 years old. A friend of my mother's came to the Bay Area to visit, an old friend from long ago, and she decided that she wanted to take me back to Idaho for a couple of weeks as a companion for her son. And so I got to stay on a dairy farm in the Shelley, Idaho area, and I plan to go out in search of that location. It was so much fun. And I would also like to visit some Hemingway locations. Um, in here, she talks about a resort that she worked at, or her mother worked at. I'm not sure. She was a teenager at the time. There's probably a picture here, so hold on. I can find it. It was here. Big Falls Inn. I do believe it's still there, or at least the Big Falls are still there. I'd like to go visit that location too. I do plan to read the sequel to this. I haven't yet. Very much enjoyed this one. I read it a couple of years ago for the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge. I very much recommend Echoes from the Hills of Idaho. Especially if you live in Idaho, it'd be great to know more about the state and the history of the state. I love local histories. I love memoirs. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for listening.